anymore. But the last time I saw Brock, I was in North Carolina for UFC's Fight Night, and I was with AJ Styles, who was our TNA World Champion. And they had great seats for us in the first or second row, right across from where the UFC guys were, across the cage, the octagon. Yeah. And I saw Randy Couture, and I'd met Randy once before. And of course, you have to give respect to Randy.
Yeah,
he's real
animal.
Guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say hello to him, and I went out of my way to shake his hand, and I went back and I sat in my seat, and I look across the way, and sitting right next to Randy is Brock. And so I said to AJ, I said, "Hey, AJ, was Brock sitting there when we walked by?" He said, "Yeah, he was, Mick." I said, "And I just walked by and didn't shake his hand?" He said, "Yes, you did, Mick." I said, "Did it appear to you like I was disrespecting the UFC champion?" He said, "That's the way it looked to me, Mick." I said, "You think I ought to go over there and change that around?" And he said, "If I were you, I would, Mick." And that was about the fastest I'd moved in about 10 years. And I walked over there. I said, "Brock, did I not?" And he goes, "I thought, what, did we have heat or something?" And here's like the last guy in the world you want being mad at you. He's just, not only is he an animal, not only does he have the skills, but man, I saw him on saw this older match with Heath Herring. I saw it only about 3 months ago. And it looked to me like he could have won, but was just enjoying the beating he was putting on him. And it had to have been the most painful for the recipient of any UFC match I'd seen, because they weren't knockout blows, but he was driving fully knees into the rib cage, just traumatic stuff.
Just a freaking animal.
He really is. I mean, he's a fucking really good fighter. And it's weird when you hear wrestlers talking about a guy like, you talk about Brock the way I talk about him. Like, oh, he wouldn't want him fucking angry at me. Right. Like, he is a big part. I was at the match where he beat Frank Mir.
Yeah.
And,
he just toyed with him, right?
He had his arm pinned, and he kind of had him almost like in a headlock, and he was just fucking slamming his fist. I was almost felt bad for the other guy. I'm like, you feel bad for a guy being beaten up that badly.
And then I'm allowed to curse on this shit,
yes.
right? Yeah. And then when he got up, he said, "Talk shit now." It's like, whoa. And I wish, part of what's great about Brock is he says exactly what's on his mind, and he kind of teed off. And I think he learned a couple lessons, about promoting matches from WWE. Obviously, that wasn't what UFC wanted him to say. Otherwise, there would have been no apology. But Brock's really put himself in a position where even if he were to lose, a championship fight, he's going to be a big name in UFC for years. Based on people want to see. That's the way it's always been in wrestling. People pay to see the bad guy lose.
Yeah, it's next month he fights again?
He's fighting
we're a month out at this
Shane
point?
Carwin, I think, is the next
and
fight.
He's a big ass motherfucker.
Yeah.
He's a big. Supposedly he's bigger than Brock. I think that was what Dana was saying.
I think I got a shot with him. I'll show you how big he is. I never met Brock, but Shane I think I met once.
Who's at the TNA thing now? What wrestlers you guys got? I can't keep track of all this, Mick. Some of the guys I know from,
Well, Kurt Angle.
Sure.
Will be wrestling.
Is he all right?
Kurt is a great...
Is he all right, though?
Let me give you an example.
We wanted to do a little intervention, but we were a little too scared. He was in here recently, and we're like,
This is a story from... It's in my next book. I've got a chapter called Name Dropping. Just name dropping.
I love it.
And you guys are in there.
Thank you, sir.
You guys are in there.
Oh, fuck. We'll sell some books for you.
And I just stories. There's just,
the steak eating story made the book?
That did not make the book.
What story about us?
Well, it's going to be a surprise, and you will be surprised.
The Jill?
No, but I will talk about Jill in just a moment. But,
all right, sorry.
The Kurt deal was, I just finished the first chapter of my book in Dublin, Ireland. I finished it about 5:30 in the morning, and I had this like writer's buzz going on. We had to catch a flight at, we had to go to the airport around 6. And we get there, the UFC guys had just had a fight in Dublin as well. And you're seeing guys walking around, got the bruises and the welts, and this guy comes up to me. He looks like an insect. I mean, because his both eyes are puffed out, and they're very measured, not one-sided. Like the guy he was fighting was obviously landing with both hands.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, brother, how are you?" I didn't even recognize the guy. He said, "Mark Coleman." I'd met Mark in Japan. Yeah. I said, "Mark, how you doing?" And he was telling me about his fight and how he won the best, he got the best fight bonus. He lost in the last 15 seconds. Apparently it was just a slugfest. And Kurt goes to walk by and he goes, Kurt, it's Mark Coleman. And the two of them hug and they start reminiscing about these matches they've had in the past. Apparently over the years, they'd won wrestled 8 times and split 4 apiece. And
Mark was a real wrestler.
Yeah, Mark was a great All-American wrestler at Ohio State. And then when he got involved in UFC, he was like an animal. But then they outlawed the headbutt, and that was kind of Mark's.
That was his thing?
Bread and butter, yeah. I get somebody down.
His bread and butter.
Yeah. And he was like Brock in that he really looked like he enjoyed inflicting that pain.
Yeah.
And Mark says something about, I remember when I beat Kurt at the 92 Nationals. He came back the next year. And right away, Kurt goes, hey, good to see you, Mark. And he walks away, and Kurt's got his head down, and I'm still kind of high on this chapter I've written, which I thought was a really good chapter. Kurt, you all right? Oh, it's nothing. And about 10 minutes later, I said, Kurt, everything okay? He goes, I can't believe he said that. I said, what? He goes, can't believe he said he beat me at the 92 Nationals. I beat him at the 92 Nationals. He beat me at the 90. It was some ridiculous thing like that. And I said, Kurt, are you serious? He said, hey, I might not have much, but don't take away my amateur career from me. I said, Kurt, listen to me. You saw Mark's face, right? He'd obviously been through a war. You know, he looked like he hadn't slept since the match. And I said, and Kurt, it was 17 years ago. Let it go, Kurt. I was like, Will Teasel or John Rambo saying that to Will Teasel in First Blood, like let it go, and he can't. You know, that's that competitive thing that these amateur wrestlers bring. Like I was always the entertainment guy. Like I didn't care less. You know, I'm proud that most of my great matches were crushing defeats.
Yeah,
you know, but,
you haven't changed over the years. Mick's been doing our show for close to 10 years now. Now, Kurt Angle has drastically changed. We're worried about that guy. You know, not enough to call him or anything, but you know.
Well, you know, you should
not enough to do anything but watch it unfold and enjoy it,
right? And make good radio out of it for everybody.
And he will give you great radio, but then he'll get in there, no matter how banged up he is, and he gives you the best match he possibly can. You know, a guy like that hasn't learned, how to do anything halfway,
right,
in life or in wrestling, and so he's his own worst enemy in some ways.
Who else you guys got?
Kurt is wrestling Matt Morgan. Sting will be wrestling our
Still doing it, huh?
He's still doing it. Rumor was this was a retirement match. I had a really good match, I thought, in April against Sting in a cage in Philadelphia, which is a tough crowd. He'll be wrestling for the championship against AJ Styles. You know, we still got Booker T. We got a lot of the names that people are familiar with.
Right.
And in my case, I'm wrestling a guy named Abyss, who he's kind of taken a page out of my book. So I watched the interview I did with him a couple of weeks ago. It was actually the first time I ever felt bad about things I was saying because they were maybe a little too honest. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure I hurt his feelings. He's a big, sensitive guy.
What'd you say?
You know what? I had a photo, a caricature, and on the show he had mistakenly knocked the caricature down and shattered it off my wall, and then, like a kid, tried to hide the evidence. And so I brought out the picture, and I said, "Look, this is a peace offering." He said, "You fixed it?" I said, "No, it's not the real thing. The real thing's gone. It's a copy. It's a fake. It's a cheap ripoff." And if anyone out there should know about cheap ripoffs, it would be you, Chris. And he was just like, the audience there, just kind of like, ooh, like, no, he didn't just go there, did he? And, sometimes it's best in wrestling to do what Terry Funk would call borderlining, where you are really just right on that border of saying things that are hurtful and true. And for some reason, the audience can make that connection. They can tell when something is real on an emotional level. And then we settle it in a fictional setting. So, we stir up real anger, emotion, and then we do what we can in the wrestling ring to make it work.
So you think he kind of wants to be like Mick Foley?
Yeah, he's got a mask similar to the one I wore in as Mankind in WWE, and he's brought out all the assortment of goodies, that I kind of made famous in this country, the thumbtacks and the barbed wire bat, and we've set the bar pretty high on this thing, and so if it's not just if the violence isn't just gratuitous, we'll be disappointing a lot of people.
Jesus, he's still wrestling. What is your wife saying? Enough? Enough.
She trusts she knows I only have to do it 5 or 6 times a year, and she's finally learned, I sat her on a subway And so this is what regular people do. You know, they do this every day. And I've sat on a train with you one time when we ran into each other, and then you get to come in here and have fun for a living, even though it's still hard work.
Right.
But when you look at the fact that, especially in this economy, you know, people have to work, you know, 270 days a year going through subways and rush hours, that to get in there, you know, 4 or 5 times a year is not the worst way to make a living.
That was the weirdest experience. I get on the Long Island Railroad. It's an empty car. And it's at the height of your WWF at the time success. And there's Mick Foley just in a fucking seat on the Long Island Railroad coming into the city to try to sell his manuscript for the first book, right?
Yeah, that's right. The first
Which ended up doing very, very well for you.
Depends on what very, very well.
What was it called?
First one was called Tatum Brown, and it did okay. It did better in the UK. And then the second one was a baseball novel, which meant there was nothing for it in the UK. They didn't even publish it over there. And you know what? If I'd really worked at it, you know, by now, if I was on my 5th or 6th book, maybe I could be building like a new readership the same way The Rock kind of built movie fans. Like, okay, first couple movies were